Hello, friends. The following Zoom meeting has been approved for audiences to wake up and think clearly by the Clear Thinkers Association of America. The film advertised has been rated WUTC, Wake Up and Think Clearly. Closed-minded may be cracked open. Some material may be inappropriate for the childish mind. Cordial, thought-provoking discussion on wisdom and compassion may develop. For more information, visit wakeupandthinkclearly.org. That's www.wakeup, the letter N, thinkclearly.org. Or visit www.buddhism4, that's the number 4, happiness.site. Thank you.
Luis Del Pino. Yes. I'm in the Zoom meeting, and so you can join me by typing in my phone number and no password. Isn't that wonderful? Well, it'll take you to like a waiting room, and then I'll let you in for security. Okay, bye.
As simple as possible and that represents something as
Luis Del Pino is going to join us. Let's see. He should show up right here. Let's see. I'm gonna start a hello friends and enemies and Facebook friends and enemies. Oh, what happened? I'm waiting for a friend. I'm waiting for Luis Del Pino to join us. Let's see, it's a Zoom meeting. And the topic is going to be on the philosophy of science. We're gonna discuss an article that we were supposed to read called Boltzmann's, I just woke up, Concept of Reality. So I'm gonna admit my friend Luis Del Pino. Okay, there he is. Luis! Oh. Wait a minute. How's that? Oh. Wait a minute. Speakers. Hello? Wait a minute. Unmute. Unmute audio.
Oh, good morning.
Luis!
I was muted, I'm sorry. I'm uncouth.
You were muted. You unmuted yourself.
Just like that.
I was trying to unmute you from here. Oh, but I can mute you.
You can mute me, huh?
Or I can mute you, unmute you. Also with a keyboard, I can go Alt A.
Destroy.
Unmute me.
Alt A, destroy.
Alt A mutes me.
Go What was it?
Oh, A mutes or unmutes me. He toggles.
This reminds me of what was the Toy Stories of the spaceman? He says, set from stun to kill with his toy gun.
You could destroy the world with this toy here.
Well, good morning. We are
Morning.
ready to go. Do you get the feel that David is not going to join us today? He said he could not host, but he did not say he could not attend.
Oh, that's good. There's hope. I mentioned it to Rami, and
How was the meeting yesterday, by the way?
I mentioned it to a guy named, I forgot his name. Oh, Mike Cordero at a meetup last night. Rami and I attended a meetup.
Yes.
With the Stoics, with Dan Stoic. And
How did that go?
And so I mentioned it to Mike Cordero. He might enjoy it. I don't know.
Well, what was the subject of the meeting? It was something.
Epictetus.
Epictetus.
Epictetus,
yeah.
Epictetus. It was.
Listen, we need to go ahead and invite. I'm gonna do that on my phone. Hold on a second. I'm not going anywhere. I'm gonna invite Francisco. Francisco.
Oh, he spelled it wrong.
Join Zoom 407 dash 486 dash.
Oh, you don't need the dash, but yeah.
Oh, okay. 407. But can you remind me the number?
486. No, wait a minute. 407-486-8642. That's my phone number.
Yes. Okay, here we go. I sent him a little WhatsApp. 474868642. Perfect. Let's see if we have the pleasure. And what about David? You need to wake him up, or? But by the way, what is the subject of the day?
Yes, we're going to discuss Boltzmann's concept of reality.
It could be too deep for this Saturday morning.
Yes, we're in the deep. But I didn't read it 5 times, but I listened and read it once.
Then I'm very curious to know what you think of what these two guys wrote about Boltzmann. What is your impression?
Yes, I sense that he was trying to make science more open-minded, less dogmatic. And he was trying to get scientists to say, okay, so you don't like this theory and you like that theory. So that doesn't mean you should let go of this theory because
of either of them.
It's what?
Both of them have their value and their perspective. They can describe reality as a whole from a different angle.
Yes, each theory is what is
not completely right and not completely wrong.
Each theory is like a representation of reality, because you can't say that a theory is reality. Each theory is a representation.
Very good. So
is our a helpful image or whatever.
Right. Yeah,
help us understand reality, to help us use reality, to help mankind deal with reality, but it's not reality. So we should
itself.
a theory with reality and say, okay, this is the best reality. So we should erase all the
That
other
is correct. That is correct.
uh,
So you got it.
all realities, even the reality, the theory of that the Earth is flat. That could be considered a reality that works for
A very short distance.
I can see.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
works for us. So
That's right. The Earth is flat as far as you're concerned. If you only look at the 100 square feet.
even in the early Buddhist or there's the practice of offering the world to the Buddhas, and it imagines the reality or the earth as something like a flat table, and there's things on top of it and things underneath it.
Right. So you got the gist of it for sure. But what one thing that I really liked about that was precisely that openness. That what I call quite often anymore perspectivism. Because one of the problems that the human mind has in understanding reality is a narrow scope. So if we look at things too closely, too narrowly, we miss the big picture, and then we make decisions that are inappropriate. We get all uptight. We don't have this flexibility of perspective. Um, the so that's the first thing. Relax. It is what it is. Reality is what it is. Let's look at it from a distance. Let's not get too close to it because then we get the tanha, the thirst feeling for being a non-being, for the sensory. We get too attached to our sensory impressions, and we are not able to detach. In French, they say prendre du recul, to step back, to look at reality and be able to study it in all its wholeness, in oneness, in its integrity. So when we do that, we're able to better, I would say, deliberate, better think, better cognate, and not make mistakes with our emotions and impulses. So this anti-dogmatism, this push towards perspectivism, openness, flexibility of views, is something that I really right away connected. I connected with. It is very reminiscent of E.O. Wilson, who talks about consilience. Um, I always mention it because he says that one cannot know anything from only one perspective. In order to know something very well, you have to use a variety of different perspectives and sciences, different angles, so you know it well, you understand it fully. So in that regard, I was already making the parallel. So openness of views, this diversification of your perspectives in understanding anything in this universe that is infinite and eternal. So I found it extremely refreshing. Now we have to understand too that this Boltzmann guy, was under a lot of duress because he had it clear in his mind that the universe was made of tiny atoms, and that went against the pervading scientific view that the universe was energy, but it was not quantized. So he had a very big battle because in his mind he was absolutely convinced that gases, for example, which was his big stuff, were composed of very tiny particles, molecules. And atoms, I don't know if he knew the distinction between atoms and molecules. I don't know. I haven't studied enough in that. But he knew that things were broken down into individual little particles. And he hypothesized that the temperature of a gas in a specific place was directly due to the kinetic energy of each one of the particles. And he did averages and computations, and he came to the conclusion that within a certain volume, with a certain amount of molecules flying around or moving around the space, it would be determining the pressure, the temperature, and he could compute the average speed of movement of a molecule in the air, and the speeds are staggering at room temperature. I just read this morning that a a molecule of nitrogen travels at 900 and something feet per second, or something crazy. I mean, extremely high speeds on an average. And of course, because they're so small, when they impact us, because right now there's air molecules impacting on my skin, they are so small that we only feel the average kinetic energy of the whole trillions of molecules flying around us, and that average of that kinetic energy gives the temperature of the room at the given pressure. That is phenomenal. You know, 100 and some years ago, this guy was already in his mind understanding this dynamic play of molecules and particles, and everybody was looking at it like he was absolutely crazy.
Oh, you mentioned consilience, the unit of
Yes,
knowledge by a Edward Osborne Wilson.
yes.
Why do you find that book valuable to your view of how to deal with reality?
I discovered Wilson after I had spent a lot of time studying by myself um, the issues or ideas or questions about life and what should I do, how should I live, how should I feel, what is the right thing, what is the wrong thing, what is practical, what is not. And I had been spending quite a bit of time reading. I started reading the different spiritual Bibles, and then I read many philosophers, and then I ended up discovering Buddhism, the Dharma or Dhamma, and I started making my own world vision. I discovered that I needed to precisely understand statements or conclusions from other thinkers with a very open perspective, because some of the things that I read made no sense whatsoever at the beginning. And then as I changed my views or my perspectives, I could find sense in them, but only from that perspective. So what doesn't make any sense from perspective A makes a heck of a lot of sense from perspective Z. So if you use A and Z, then you are able to see a concept, an idea, a belief, or a feeling, or truth much better. Because you can say, yes, this is this truth that we're talking about, but this truth from this angle makes a lot of sense, from this angle doesn't make any sense. So it helps you uh, make your thinking dynamic. And after I had come to this conclusion, I bumped on the Wilson, E.O. Wilson, that says that kind of coined the term consilience, which is to use uh, uh, a priori very different sciences like physics and psychology, for example, two completely different sciences, physics and psychology. One just measures what is, the other one measures how we feel, how we think about what is. And in the combination of two apparently absolutely different sciences that have nothing to do with each other, when you find concealings between them, then you understand any idea or conception or term that is pinned between them. And what he wrote a book in which he has a little diagram, and it has a point in the middle. It has like a square with 4 subsquares, and in the middle there is a concept, an idea, or something that we're discussing, and then each one of the squares is different sciences, like I don't know, climate science, economics, physics, and psychology, or something like that. And he says that the more we go closer to the theme at hand, the less each one of the sciences is involved in it. It's just like, what is in psychology does not pertain to physics. But as you go wider in your understanding and you go wider in your perspective, all of a sudden the same point that you are analyzing now is involved in both sciences. You're able to kind of bounce off, from the physical point, from the psychological point, from the climate science point, from the economics point, et cetera, et cetera.
Trying to look for a word that describes that's used more in politics. Something that when Barack Obama became president, he was trying to make it his an effort of going across the aisle and bringing them in. What is that called? What or you?
There is a word in politics that they use that is. It will come back, but I know exactly what you're talking about.
Or you're trying to bring them in and not necessarily negotiate.
It's funny, no, because it's a word, when you hear it, it makes it sound like you do not cooperate on both sides of the aisle, but that's what it is. It is talking about using both sides of the aisle to create or generate a policy or a change in the law.
But then the problem is then your constituent or people looking back in history and says, oh, he went on their side and didn't.
That's right.
For what we wanted, and
that's right. That's right.
But in science and in what?
Well, I would say that a good word to use other than concealings that people typically haven't bumped against, or they haven't studied it, or they don't understand it very well. We could use the word a super perspective, like an omni perspective. So looking at any phenomenon from an array of different perspectives.
Well, there's a definition in a dictionary for consilience. It says agreement between the approaches to a topic of different academic subjects. So you're agreeing, looking at all the different approaches, all the different academic sciences, and trying to come to some agreement, especially in science and humanities. And it sounds like from the article, Boltzmann's concept of reality, that he was trying to do that because I imagine at that time, that was before Einstein theory of reality and maybe ideas of the what is it, quantum and other things they were starting to think about. And so maybe they were arguing, there were philosophers versus scientists. Well, philosophers that were involved in science were promoting that there shouldn't be atoms, and then scientists that were using data were trying to show that there are atoms as things. And maybe this Boltzmann
was trying to do some kind of consilience.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. That's why I think that he
To
didn't use that word, but he
tell
was talking exactly about that.
he was trying to tell the philosopher scientist, I guess the idealist kind of scientist versus the realist kind of scientist. Like the realist kind of scientists were promoting that atoms do exist as inherently existent objects, and idealist kind of scientists were trying to say no, there's no such thing as atoms, or maybe it's just energy or something else, right? And so he was trying to come to or trying to satisfy both sides. He was trying to say that okay, you idealists, go ahead and continue that way, but think of oh, you're back. Oh, I have to click on admit. Yeah, the Boltzmann was trying to tell the idealist philosopher scientist to not get stuck on that there isn't atoms, but to treat the idea of atoms as a model that will help deal with experiments, and go ahead and continue not having to believe, but just treat it as a model, a representation perhaps that might work in running experiments, and then and that maybe that was kind of his consilience, or to try to bring the other side in. He went across the aisle. Oh, I forgot, or I'm still having. Oh, you're muted. Or maybe I have to unmute you. Let's see.
Sorry, I was.
Oh, now I muted you.
No, I'm sorry. I disconnected without. I didn't do it on purpose. And then when I came in, but I was going to say that the partisan is the word that they use in politics. A partisan effort. So basically, two opposite poles in politics that make an effort together. But it's partisan because each party has their own thing. So, but they come together. So partisan to me sounds like uncooperative, only from one side, from one party. But partisan effort is when they both work together across the aisle. So
yeah, so Boltzmann was trying to work across the aisle to bring the idealist philosopher scientist over to the idea that okay, so don't accept that atoms exist, but at least treat it as a model, as a theory. And so maybe that's why he went into
as a workable perspective.
Yeah, to treating theories not as real, but as
dogmas,
models, right. as representations,
what I find so beautiful in this kind of thinking, whether it is from Boltzmann or from Wilson in this case, is that in my own personal experience, after spending a lot of time thinking about different ideas, problems, objects, phenomena, I came to the conclusion that the application of consilience or partisanship in our own representation of life, because you and I are not scientists, so but we still deal with reality just like scientists do, but scientists do deal with reality with very specific items, topics. I want to know what the temperature is doing. Why, when I put my hand in a hot pot, do I get burned? What is happening there? So they're very specific in what they analyze. But you and I, we deal with reality in a heuristic kind of way. Let's make it simple. Let's not complicate ourselves much. If it feels good, if it's okay, if I'm okay with that, that's what I understand. That's what I decide, and that's the way I live. So we are, in a way, amateur scientists representing reality, maybe not with formulas, but you could say that our behavior, our conduct, our life, the way we behave, our character, the way we interact with things and people are our formulas, unscientific formulas to represent what is, which is reality as a whole. And my discovery has been that if I use this kind of approach, the Boltzmann approach or the Wilson approach, in the way I look at my cup of coffee, or the way I drink coffee, or the way I talk to you, the way I position my light, the way I eat, the way I sleep, the way I go to work, the way I buy groceries at the store, the way I drive on I-4, all that, this openness of, okay, let's consider the following and look at it from different perspectives, it brings on phronesis, the Greek word for practical wisdom, which then reverts, remember the trickle-down wisdom, this practical wisdom reverts into all the pyramid of the Maslow's pyramid that goes down all the way down to what I eat, who I live with, how I conduct myself, if I watch TV or I don't watch TV, if I spend my time doing one thing or the other, if I do exercise or don't exercise, if I become a vegan versus a meat eater, et cetera, et cetera. So all that has been, I can confirm in my own life.
Welcome, Mike. Unmute yourself. He's outside.
Morning, gentlemen.
Good morning, Mike.
How are you?
We are living science fiction.
Are you in Chicago or something like that?
I'm in Chicago.
Wow.
It looks nice.
Nice background, by the way. Nice background. Look at that. There's a beautiful tree.
Are you on a phone or something?
I'm on my deck. My deck.
On your deck. That's your backyard?
Yeah.
Are you using a laptop?
Yep. Actually an iPad.
An iPad. Oh, that's
well. It's. I'm glad that you.
Thanks for inviting. Thank you for inviting.
I'm very glad that you could join. That you could get on this one. This one is a good. We started just a few minutes ago. Jairo and myself. Jairo is hosting. I have invited Francisco, but he hasn't shown up yet, and David Norton, who has been present previously, I don't think he's going to make it today. I don't know why, but we are talking about a beautiful idea. I think I shared it with you yesterday. This short writing about the Boltzmann concept of reality. Boltzmann was a 19th century physicist and mathematician. He became very, very famous. He had a very tough time in his life. As a matter of fact, he committed suicide when he was 60 little. He had bouts of depression and everything, but he was a genius. The guy was a genius, and he was one of the first physicists to have the intuition that reality was made of tiny little particles. So particles, atoms, molecules, et cetera, and of course. At the time, he was way ahead of his time, so of course he suffered for it. He was ridiculed. He had a lot of opposition, and he had a very tough time. He had a very tough time because for most of his life, in the academic world, although he was recognized as a freaking genius, his most fundamental ideas about the nature of reality, which is what us guys talk about most of the time in non-scientific terms, more into philosophical and psychological terms. He had a very, very big opposition, was never recognized until his death. And then, lo and behold, right after his death, Planck himself, Max Planck, recognized him as a freaking genius, and he said, yes, he was right all along. That's the way, the quantum nature of reality. He was already intuiting that. But what I was interested in, and I kind of studied, is character.
Luis, I'm so sorry. The dog is barking and it's waking up neighbors. I'll be right back. Sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I hate to interrupt.
Oh, wonder if I could. No, I can't. I'm gonna try to call. I'm gonna try to call Rami. Let's see if I can call Rami or David. Let's see.
So I will continue what you and I were talking about, which is that it is my personal experience. Oh, you're back. So I discovered this little essay. Non-scientific language, and the ideas of Boltzmann. I'm sorry, and he, even shared some of his writings, and in them I immediately saw a lot of myself or my ideas, not in scientific terms, but in philosophical terms. And one of the most important things, and Jairo agreed with me, that he talks about openness of mind. He talks about getting away from dogmatism. He talks about how every physical, every theory, scientific theory, is a representation of reality. Which is, what is the real is that, and then we kind of represent ourselves that reality, and then we try to make sense of it. So I immediately felt very comfortable with that because, and you and I have discussed Wilson, E.O. Wilson, and consilience, that is looking at any phenomenon. And when I say phenomenon, I'm talking about an object or an idea, because an idea is a phenomenon, or a feeling, or an emotion, or anything, and look at it from a super perspective, which includes many different angles and sciences. And a fact can be analyzed from many different ways. And the more ways you look at it, the different angles you look at it, the more open-minded you are, and you better understand it. So I felt. Sorry?
Question. Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Unless you want to continue along.
No. That was it. Go ahead.
So what is these aspects of reality? The aspects of reality that the model that you're describing, so that there are many different. So to be open-minded, meaning that there are many different aspects of reality.
There are many different ways to look at the different aspects of reality.
But there's only one?
Well, there's only one reality. Obviously, the same tree that is behind you, we look at the same tree. There's one tree there. Now, what we feel about the tree, how we think about it, how we analyze it, is it good, is it bad, is it beautiful, is it ugly, what is it made of, et cetera, et cetera. Those are the different representations. Sure. Exactly. Of what is behind you.
So, for example, a biologist, a physicist, a painter, an impressionist, completely different.
And a psychologist and a philosopher and everything. So,
this reminds me of the fable of the elephant and the three blind men. So one is feeling the trunk and sees a snake. The other one's feeling the tail, sees a horse, and the other is feeling the leg and the ear and thinks it's a tree.
That's a very good, good imagery. It's the same thing, and you make it very clear right there that if you only focus on one perspective of that phenomenon, you miss out on the big picture, and you make decisions, and you do actions that are flawed because you don't realize you're dealing with an elephant. You think you're dealing with, I don't know, a piece of rope with hair at the end.
Now, the interesting part of that is if the three men were to be able to communicate with one another as we are, they would understand by putting these pieces together that this, in fact, is an elephant.
Absolutely beautiful analogy, because as you are saying, 3 men together looking at an elephant see the elephant much better than one man. So now I take this further. If I can look at reality, the whole of reality, life, as you and as Jairo and as myself and as Francisco and as David and the other guy and the other guy, my perspective becomes almost universal. So I take everybody's theory as mine, I'm representing, talking about. So I become a multi-mind in analyzing an object. So your imagery is very, very good, Mike.
This is very interesting, and I think this is also patterned in nature. It's patterned in terms of anthropology and archaeology. For example, if we look at a Mayan ruin in the Yucatan Peninsula, we see that the same type of architecture that was being formulated in Egypt, for example, and it's that idea of perhaps the way that we evolve as human beings. After all, we do all come from Africa. So there is we come from one particular biology, one shared biology. So it's very interesting to me, and it's always interesting that our family from Africa, where are you from? Well, my family's from Africa. Who are you? And that's very interesting to me. But anyway, so we disperse throughout the world, and we come up with the same. Somehow that idea is spawning from this conversation. I'm not sure why, if that's making any sense.
But that's no. It makes a hell of a lot of sense, because you can take that same string of thought, and you can go back to before we were we. When did man become man? We always talk about was the egg or was the egg or the chicken first? Well, I can say, when did the egg become an egg? When did the chicken become a chicken? And wasn't there like a range of becoming before the chicken was a chicken? It was a pre-chicken, a pre-chicken, a pre-pre. That didn't look like a chicken, but it was a chicken in formation. So we can take your analogy back to the beginning of time, which has no beginning. So we are the expression of reality, again, looking at itself.
It's fascinating.
So
exactly.
The wider we go, the more different perspectives, the more different slants and angles we use in analyzing anything, any aspect of reality, the more it brings lucidity, clairvoyance, in a sense. And I feel that there's a book that says many lives, many masters. I believe that it's many lives and many minds for a super omniscience. So this open-mindedness is what frees the human consciousness to truly understand the world, i.e. to truly understand itself. And from that understanding comes the cessation of suffering. It's like, oh, I got this. So that's my experience.
I knew you were going to text me, by the way, this morning. I wasn't going to bring it up. Well, I knew that, and I'm not, trust me, I'm scientific based, but I was thinking, I was hoping that you would, because I have a little bit of time this morning. This is not me bringing this up because I want to impress Jairo and Luis. Yeah. I'm simply saying that when I saw the text come through, and I know that maybe that's not a supernatural, but maybe does that have anything to do with what you're describing?
Well,
because I knew that you were going to. I was just about to contact you because I was hoping that we could do a Zoom meeting.
Yeah.
And because it was the right moment, now that I'm here, I'm like, this is so enjoyable.
It is very enjoyable, and I think I just beat you to the punch. It was going to happen no matter what.
Anyway.
It just didn't happen the way you thought it was going to happen, which was you calling us instead of us calling you.
It's interesting because you're bringing up so many interesting things. The cognitive revolution that we talked about, they say happened something like 80,000 years ago, and we find it in Spain, and we find it in France, right? With the artwork. The cognitive revolution, meaning your question is, when did man become man? Well, we have to ask ourselves, how do you define man?
That's right.
And, so it's this idea of, and we talked a little bit about this, Jairo, which is the mythology behind the Garden of Eden, which is this idea of being at one with everything and being at peace. And then there's this idea of wisdom or knowledge that our minds have evolved into, and then it's this idea of self. And this would be the cognitive revolution. There are three major revolutions that are understood. Cognitive revolution about 70,000 years ago, the Industrial Revolution, which was not the Industrial Revolution, the Agricultural Revolution, which was about 15,000 years ago. And then an Information Revolution, which would have happened with who was it, Guggenheim, with the printing press?
Yeah.
Those are the
boom, data, the communication revolution. Yeah.
The boom, boom, boom. And
the internet of the 15th century or something like that.
I don't know.
Being able to print a book.
So what's next? What's the next revolution?
They say that
something like AI.
Yes.
It's embedded, or that it's just everywhere. The Internet of Things is just everywhere, and with 5G connecting everything, you could even have a chip in a pen and just in your eyeglasses. There's Google Glass that didn't catch on. Maybe it will eventually, or something like it.
Mm-hmm.
Where you can get information by looking in your.
I think you're onto something.
The answer to your question, from my perspective, Mike, the revolution for me, individually, has consisted in the following: that there are two kinds of knowledge, the conventional knowledge and the non-conventional knowledge. That non-conventional knowledge, which is precisely a super perspectivism of looking at any object, any knowledge, anything from a omniscient kind of perspective, is fed by actually conventional knowledge. So it's like the 1970s lamps. Those lamps with the bubbles. I don't know the name of them. But
Sure,
lava lamps.
Lava, yeah.
Lava lamps. So you have.
I did too many drugs. I forgot looking at lava lamps.
But so that is reality. So you are looking at reality. In a lava lamp, you're looking at reality. Every bubble is a universe. Let's put it that way. It's a universe, like our universe, that comes into being and fizzles out, but doesn't go anywhere. It's still in the same lamp. It's same reality. So you look in the lava lamp is a good representation of reality, the whole universe. Within the universe, you have bubbles of reality, sub-realities, which would be one of those yellow bubbles would be our universe. That's in expansion. It has a certain time span of 15 billion years, and then it may fizzle out, but it's going to come back. It's going to come back from the bottom. It didn't even go anywhere. It was still in the lamp, So the circular, the yin yang, the never-ending circle of being and non-being, the rebirth, you know, that they talk about in Buddhism. But how can you call that rebirth? You didn't go anywhere. You just, you know, you were not phenomenal for a while, and then you became phenomenal. But your noumenal nature was inside that reality. So this is, to me, the more I study, the more I find Boltzmann or Planck or anything, any idea, Buddha, the Dharma, the Vedas, you and I talking about life and work and, you know, salesmanship, et cetera, the more you have conventional knowledge.
We have a friend, Ken, joining us. Hey, Ken,
Whoa.
Thanks for joining us.
Unmute him.
Oh, he's muted. I think.
You have the power. You have the power, Jairo. You're all powerful.
Am I supposed to? I'm going to stop sharing the lava lamp.
Nice. Very cool. I was listening to some Tibetan music, Tibetan bells.
Oh, nice, nice.
Ken, can you unmute yourself, Ken? Yes.
And
welcome, Ken.
Thanks. Oh, just kidding.
Ken's an alternate version of Mike. Without the glasses.
I just got a haircut, so you know, I was
similar aspects of the same reality.
Wonderful.
That's it. That's it. Both sides of the same coin. Good morning.
Good
morning.
That's good. Good morning, Ken.
You got a little bit more hair than I do.
I don't know.
It's very close. It's a close match.
It's interesting. We were just talking about the one. I come from Africa, like we all do. My family comes from Africa. They left a couple 100,000 years ago, maybe 100,000 years ago. I'm not sure. And it's
Eve theory.
This is a family reunion.
So I'm saying Eve theory, mitochondrial DNA doesn't lie.
This idea of every time we see one another, I haven't seen you in a while.
At least in this reality or this life.
That's it.
Oh.
You just have amnesia.
That's right.
Up until knowledge is received, that's true.
I just said we were trying to figure out, because Jairo had a lava lamp on, just as you were before you came in, Ken. And Luis said, what is that thing that they did in the 70s with the bubbles and everything? And I couldn't remember it because I did way too many drugs looking at lava lamps.
You were inside the lava lamp, Mike.
But I forgot what it's called.
So when you're inside, you can't see it. That's the problem.
We're all lava lamps.
Amnesia.
All right. So now we have all four of us. Who wants to summarize? Who wants to summarize the subject of the day? We've been at it for about 50 or 40 some minutes. So who wants to summarize the subject of the day? Maybe Jairo, you're hosting, so go at it.
Yes, it reminds me of politics and bipartisanship and walking across the aisle to try to get I'm looking for another word, but you know what it's like. But in this case it was happening in the early 1900s or maybe before, when there's some were trying to promote the atomic theory, and others were trying to be more idealistic, perhaps. And so Boltzmann was more in favor of the atomic theory, but he didn't want to make it like, okay, this is the fact, this is the way reality is. He was trying to walk across the aisle and get the idealist to see it his way by saying this is just a theory, just a representation, and so don't take it so literally. But but see the benefit and see that it could be useful. That's what he was trying to do, I think.
Well, if I may interrupt, what is the subject of the day?
The subject of the day, maybe I'll summarize it real quick. We were talking about perspectivism, meaning how we individually represent life to ourselves and others when we talk about it and we share. And Boltzmann was very good in that sense, although he was a scientist. He was proposing that science represents reality in terms of formulas or theories, and because he had so much conflict with other scientists that said no, life is not made of atoms, because at the time it was way ahead of his time. He said, let's not be so dogmatic. Let's agree to disagree. And let's use different theories and different formulas to describe the same concept or the same phenomenon from different perspectives. And I found it very interesting. That's why I asked Jairo to make that the subject of the conversation, because you, Jairo, Mike, and I are like scientists, non-scientists. We are looking at reality, we're living reality, we're representing reality to ourselves to a certain degree, better or worse or whatever. And the more flexible our views about reality become, the better we can understand it. And the better we understand reality, the better we harmonize with reality. The better we're able to cope driving on I-4. The better we are able to cope with a nasty boss, the better we're able to cope with a difficult partner or a difficult neighborhood or a difficult society. So the more flexible we are in understanding what we see as reality, the better we can harmonize with it, manage our lives, and become less aggravated.
It's interesting. Right, but when I like I said, we're talking about different perspectives. We're talking basically about different branches of the same tree, correct?
Correct.
And
different sciences. Yes.
That being said, when you look at it, when you bring up science, a lot of your words like flexibility and stuff like that does not apply in science. Science is not about being flexible. Science is about fact and what is quantifiable and what is proven. That is both its strength and its weakness, as far as I see it, because where matter ends, science is useless. That's what all about. Science is man's mechanism to understand the world around him, the world that he perceives through his senses. You see? So to really understand, to go where you're going, or go where was it, Bozeman and Tesla, where they were going, they were beyond the senses. Hawking was like that too.
Yeah.
So a lot of us, so in order to really, really understand the world around you, you've got to understand your place in that world around you. So by understanding yourself, it's like, you know what, I always like it is, I always use this example in my classes. Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon, that album. If you look at the cover of that album, it's got the prism and it's got the one light coming in and it's got the rainbow coming out. Okay, now that rainbow coming out are not different lights. They're all aspects of the one light. So by understanding that one light, the aspects themselves fall into place. You don't have to understand the red chakra, the yellow chakra, the orange. You have to understand each of them. You just understand the one light that's providing it all. You see? So that one light, that one point is you yourself. So by understanding yourself, all of these other stuff that you're talking about falling into place will all fall into place by itself if you understand who you are and what you're about.
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah. So
talk about perspective too.
Absolutely, that's exactly what this is about.
When you listen to Dark Side of the Moon with headphones, wow.
Yeah.
Dude.
I still do.
I mean, it is, and that's a completely different experience than, you're missing out on some things.
Oh yeah.
In terms
I
of,
still glean insight from that album.
it's fantastic. It's unbelievable. Yeah, I just do it. I listened to it last week with headphones on. Fantastic.
Great album. They have a lot. Now the other one, I've always followed and fell into Tesla because I finally understood the concepts of what he was talking about, understanding reality through 3s, 6s, and 9s. A lot of people that throws them off. But you know, in meditation and in preaching, as I usually get these kind of you know, I don't want to call them revelations, but I get kind of get downloads, and I understood the concept of what he was talking about.
Insights.
6s, exactly. 3s, 6s, and 9s. Now 3s, of course, is energy. That's what he's talking about. Proton, neutron, electron. That's represented in spirituality as Father, Son, Holy Spirit, Hinduism, generator, operator, destroyer, Native American, sun, earth, moon. So these are all representations of energy. And then energy that coalesces, it coalesces in the gas, it coalesces in the stars, it coalesces in the planets. Sometimes they further and coalesces into actual life. Those are the 6s. So when he's talking about 3s and 6s, he's talking about energy to matter, to existence. And then the 9s is the totality of that entire creation. Because if you look at a spiral galaxy from the center around, and it always goes around, it looks like a whirlpool, but if you look at it, it's a 9. Understand? It's a 9. So when he was talking about understanding, if you understand the concepts of 3s, 6s, and 9s, he was telling you that the nature of existence as it is in this moment. That's what he was talking about.
No argument again. So yes, there is what is, which is reality, it, and there is what emerges from reality, which is knowledge regarding itself. Because we are not other than reality, we're just an aspect of reality. Knowledge is an aspect of reality. So basically, no matter how you paint it, no matter what you see, whether you see a 3, a 6, a 9, or a 4.5, or whatever it is, it's always what is looking at itself through knowledge, consciousness, representation. So what is represents itself through consciousness with a certain degree of clarity. So for example, if we pick a mosquito, through a mosquito, reality sees itself with limited, to our knowledge, because we don't know how the mosquito thinks, but you know, based on behavior and conduct and stuff and patterns, it's kind of limited. Reality sees itself with a certain degree of clarity in the case of a mosquito or the leaf of a tree or an electron or a string through the vibration of emptiness or nothingness. So reality sees itself with a certain degree of clarity through any of its parts. So the whole sees itself through its aspects with a certain degree of clarity. And if the clarity is so infinite that you can consider the aspect a superconductor of the object itself, the noumenon, reality as a whole, then that's when you can call, you know, the enlightenment of the insight, you know, the reality sees itself and goes, ah, that's what I am. So that eureka moment, the lion's roar of Buddha when he went, okay, I got this through the, you know, the meditation, the insight meditation that he did. He understood the Four Noble Truths, the 3 characteristics, impermanence, stress, and non-being or no self, or in fact, you know, what do you call that? Emptiness in Chinese, sunyata, etc., etc. The moment that reality is, or the point, the wormhole of consciousness through which reality is able to go from being everything, pure existing, pure being, to a consciousness that is based on its own physicality, because, you know, you need a brain to think. Reality does not know it exists directly. It only knows it exists through its aspectual quality, which is phenomena. Whether they are physical, we call physical, mental, spiritual, energy, or whatever it is. So we are the tool. You can Mike, Jairo, myself, the mosquito, and anything phenomenal, is potentially the tool through which reality is able to see itself fully. So this over here, this representation of 3, 6s, and 9s, whether we're looking at a galaxy, we're looking at a string, or we're thinking about ethics, aesthetics, or the inequalities of the world, whatever it is reality looking at itself, trying, not even trying because it doesn't know it's trying. It's the moment that that a consciousness goes, oh, this is reality thinking about itself, that's when this mistaken identity disappears and reality starts looking at itself with a high degree of precision and clarity.
That's interesting. I'm for some reason, anytime we're talking about this subject, I think of I was married for over 20 years and divorced, and part of my issue was I considered weeds that grew out of the ground, and I considered them plants, and so I didn't poison them, and I would let them grow incredibly. This would disturb my appetite very much. It was not a good thing to do, but I think I did it. I think I also did it as a probably anyway. But some of these weeds would grow so tall that they would flower. And this idea that you're talking about, Luis, this idea of reality and cognition, and we were talking about the cognition revolution, this idea of I am me, I am self, this understanding that takes place. It's a phenomenal trip to be here. And anyway, it's art. It's a drama. It's a fantastic song. We were just talking about Pink Floyd and this idea of the dance. Ken, you talked about the galaxy and the spiral and the 9. What a wonderful, beautiful dance that is that we're doing all at once.
In this reality and the others that have existed before and the ones that are coming up. So it's all happening now at the same time. So this dance is something we've done before. The only thing that changes is our memories of it. That's it. Nothing more. This is why people like you, when you really look at somebody who understands these concepts, they don't worry about anything. They don't even worry about food on the table. They don't worry about bills. When I was in India, there was some who didn't even wear clothes. They wanted no attachments. They just came out only because they had to eat and beg for food and go back into the caves and meditate. That's it. That's all they did. And I was like, whoa, I've seen these guys. They come out with these beads to cover themselves up. Obviously, they come out, they do their begging, and right back up into the hills, into the caves, and nobody sees them for 23 hours. And then they come out, and if they're drawn to you, or if you're and if you give them a little food, they will give you their teachings, the benefit of their knowledge. And I don't know. It's like the same thing happened to me when I was in Japan. I don't know if it's because I had so much I was in the Marines. I was 21, so my sobriety was non-existent for those 365 days, that to say the least. And sure. I remember having a conversation with this elder Japanese gentleman that was always in this park. They always, outside of these bases that we were at, that we had in Japan, they had these what they call friendship parks, just little pocket parks that they would just put up there. And one thing I noticed is that these hobos, these homeless people, would move into these parks and they would take care of them. The bathrooms were spotless. You could go in there and eat food off the floor in these baths. These are public restrooms, and they are spotless. They clean the parks. If there's any trouble, they make sure, they act like police. They don't do anything. And I would always go staggering up the hill, because my base that I was at was on top of a hill, and I would be so drunk that I'd have to kind of take 5 minutes and sit there and catch my breath before I back up the hill. Well, there was always this group, and there was always this man I made eye contact with for like 6-7 months. And the month before I left, we finally kind of started talking. And it turns out that him and his whole group, this was back in the 80s, were World War II veterans, and they were samurai. And they were so disgruntled with with Japan surrendering and adopting Western ways that they broke their swords and turned their back on society. And it struck me, it was so deep how these guys were. They were so into the whole Bushido code. They really understood what it was, and they were like, it was better that they dropped 20 nukes than we lose our ways in who we are, which is why they did what they did. You know, they dropped. I mean, that's when they turned their back. The symbolic meaning of that is them breaking their swords and turning, and that's exactly what they did. And the knowledge that they had, you know, what they were talking about, they knew, you know, was all the old world esoteric. Yes. To me, it made no sense at the time. But now, as I reflect back on the conversations I had with them, you know, and, you know, I mean, he was like, he was the one that made me aware of the whole racial problem. And, you know, I had rose-colored glasses. They're like, you're dark skinned. What are you doing in that country? This is what they do. He knew more of American history than I did.
This is beyond the sort of this Western pestilence that you describe that takes over a culture. I've heard it described as well that, for example, Alan Watts had a lecture on Japanese carpentry, and to be a Japanese carpenter, this is an ancient skill, and the way you described it, you'll have to, much better than I could, but essentially you need to start learning when you're 5 or 6. Well, that society has changed so much that, you know, you go to school until you're 20 to be an insurance salesman, as the way Watts put it, and it's too late because you needed to be with your father from the time you were 5 or 6, that whole time. And the whole thing's lost. Very interesting story. And what an
I've never forgotten him. I've never forgotten that man. I never even asked his name. I don't know his name to this day. To this day. It was like one of those surreal moments, those aha moments. I had an aha moment before I realized I had an aha moment, you know? But again, like I said, you know, the alcohol was on the brain, that kind of thing, you know. So I was like, I really wasn't about it. But the funny thing is, it was like a lucid dream. I remember every word of the conversations that we had, you know? And it was just, you know, I wonder what became of them. These guys, they were all very, very stoic. When they told me they were Japanese, I mean, I could see it then. They sat there cross-legged, like in lotus, backs straight, you know, very lucid, very, very, you know, they just watched life go by. That's it. That's all they did. That's all they did. Kind of like those men in India in the caves, just their own way of, like I said, perceiving the reality through their perspective. Amazing.
Ken, you said before you teach?
Excuse me?
You said before that you teach? Are you a teacher?
I teach high school, but I'm working with ESC kids right now.
SC?
And,
special education?
Yeah, special ed.
Special needs. Okay.
Special needs kid. I teach at the high school level now. But now that's kind of gone and out of the way too. So it's like, you know. I also do have my own spiritual discourses class that I do on I have like a little Facebook page, that kind of thing, you know.
Yes.
So I give my satsangs once a week, that kind of thing. So you guys are more than welcome to come in if you guys want to. If you're on Facebook, you can join the school. May I say the school, Jairo?
Yes.
You got an invite, you never accepted it. It's called the School of Inner Awareness and Meditation, or So I Am.
Interesting. I'll look at that. So we're talking. We're all looking at, or we all have interest in this kind of non-conventional thinking, which you're still thinking, but it's non-conventional, where instead of looking at things and the relationships between things, we look at through things, and through their relationships, we look at the nature or the essence of anything in any relationship, any group, or anything. So that is a perspective that is different. It's still a perspective, but it's different. And it's a combination of those two different ways of looking at things, which is a conventional one, because we're still talking about things in their relationships, and we're still talking about their essence. The only difference is that things in their aspect have a specific aspect, but the essence of anything, I propose, is the same one. All things are the same in essence. Now that essence is the quid. What is the essence of anything? What is the nature of any phenomenon? And
The soul.
even the nature, I'm sorry?
The soul.
Yeah, you can call that the soul, but of course that brings a lot of, yeah, I'm very careful when I talk, especially about abstract things or subtle things or things that are, you can't touch or see, like non-being, non-arising. And I'm very careful to define the word or the perspective from which I use the word. So soul, if you talk about soul, a lot of people are going to think is me, the non-material me, but it's still me. And or that some people talk about our individual soul, and then there's the universal soul, Brahman. So you start talking about it. Wait a minute. I mean,
Well, they're one and the same. The universal soul and the individual, the perceived individual soul are one and the same.
Yes, they have different aspects. Yeah, I agree. So again, this is the conversation. This is our interest. We're trying to define the soul, right? The individual soul, the universal soul, the cosmic soul. What is that soul? What is it? How do you define that? Because that
energy.
soul,
Energy, pure energy.
yes, is so. Yes, you can talk about that too and say, okay, well, this is pure energy. The whole reality is pure energy.
Exactly.
But what is the nature? What is the soul of energy? What is the essence? How do I describe, in very general words, what is and how? What are the qualities of energy? For example. You can also, how do I describe the undescribable? Because if the essence of it, it's how do you describe the ineffable, the undescribable? And you can only
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, you can only describe it by opposition. What it is not that I can touch and feel and measure. So what is the quality? What is the very description of not? Because everything is not.
If it's everything, like you said earlier, if it's really everything and understanding itself from different aspects, then the real question is, what isn't it? So if it's everything, then that question is null and void, because it's everything. It's in one aspect of that. Now, in understanding it, it cannot be understood. Like I always talk about people trying to understand through the perspective of the mind and science. Remember, the mind is a three-dimensional object, I guess, if you want to call it, for lack of a better term. And what we're talking about are fourth, fifth, and sixth dimensional concepts. So in order to take a three-dimensional mind and try to understand a higher level concept requires a certain type of understanding, okay? Now, let me be clear on this. I liken this to having a 3G phone and trying to jump onto a 5G network. It just can't be. There has to be a bridge between the two. Therefore, to understand what it is that you're talking about cannot be quantified, cannot be spoken of, cannot be compartmentalized by a three-dimensional mind. It can be understood through direct experience of what it is that you're talking about, which is what happened to me when I went to India, when I had my third eye opened, and everything became question, like what happened to Buddha. What Buddha understood when he had his aha moment was that everything he did, everything that he tried to understand, was completely worthless. He didn't have to. When he was asked what enlightenment was, He just looked at the guy and he said, "I'm awake. Nothing more. Nothing more." All the other concepts and everything else was, completely irrelevant to him. They were all different. It's like trying to understand a tree one leaf at a time. You see, or trying to chop down a tree one branch at a time instead of the trunk. I like to use these kind of examples. It kind of simplifies them. It kind of makes it a little bit more. Sometimes it's a little too simple, but for a lot of people, definitely can get for them to see what it is that I'm trying to convey. So, the direct experience, attaining that direct experience, is key to understanding what it is that you're talking about, what it is that you're trying to understand. So, for me, and I'm not saying that this is the way to do it. I'm not saying that, to me, whatever resonates with an individual person, if that resonates true to their heart with them, whatever it is that they're pursuing is what they're supposed to be doing. I don't judge it. I don't condemn it. I do not say it's wrong. I say more power to you. Knock yourself out. Because there's something along that path that you need to learn in order to learn that, well, maybe I need to switch gears, I need to jump onto another path. The one thing I've understood is that the truth that we're looking for is all around us. Therefore, it is pathless. So to truly understand what is pathless, to compartmentalize yourself to a path, is only going to take you further from truth.
That's what Luis Del Pino refers to as consilience.
Yeah, that's Krishnamurti too.
To bring in the different sciences, the different humanities. Trying to get out of your own science and try to focus on the object of focus or whatever, but use different fields to understand it better.
Modalities, I think is what
to be less dogmatic, to have an open mind and see what other specialists, how they view it, and not think of it all. No, there must be only one theory that should handle it. No, you should use all theories and see what.
Yeah.
It's like a big elephant, and we're all the six blind men, and we're touching different parts of the elephant, and we're saying, oh, this tail, oh, this is the rope. And that's what reality is.
What I've learned is that for some people, what you were just saying, they have that dogmatic view. And you know what? What I've learned is that although that does not resonate with me, it is okay for them. So more power to them. If they want to approach it with a ritualistic, dogmatic approach, as narrow as that is, then that's where they're supposed to be. I just don't judge it anymore. It just is what it is. Go for it. If that's what you need to do, then that's what you need to do. If that's how you understand the world around you, that's how I always used to I have this friend that I grew up with, he always, a smart kid, and we're the same age, started kindergarten and everything. We stayed friends all these years. He's always would get these killer jobs, and he would always do well for himself, but he would always blow it because he struggled with addiction. And all these years, I kept, he over the years, it's always been this way. Well, about 6 or 7 years ago, he found Jesus and completely turned his life around. He belongs to a very, to us would be a very narrow, dogmatic, ritualistic type of thing. But you know what? It works for him. And that's fine. That's fine. People got to come into it on their own, which is why the old teachings always stress, work on your light. Make your light shine brighter. Because when darkness comes on those around you, they instinctively look for light.
There's not a lot of time. You got to get what you can get. In terms of this ride that we're on, I agree. I heard the Dalai Lama say that. He's like, look, if this is what you were raised in and this speaks to you, then continue down that path.
Exactly.
There's not a lot of, I got sober in 2002, September 5th. That's my sobriety date. And this idea of the steps, this idea of an awakening, there's not a lot of time here. This is a short ride now, at least while I'm here, while I'm enjoying this. So that's really my perspective as well. I mean, if you can, wherever you're at right now, just, open up your eyes. And so.
What is your name again?
Mike.
my twin. I'll call you my twin. My brother from another mother. All right. Question. When you say, I have a short time, we only have like a short time here. When you say I, who are you talking about?
Mike,
Mike.
this experience, this ride.
Okay, but the soul is infinite, correct?
It's true. I get that. But, there's this idea, and you talk about energy, this idea of being able to absorb it. I still have that idea of that thirst or that craving, which we could talk a little bit about, but that sense of adventure, that energy that's driving me to be able to pull it in. There's that aspect of nature, that wildness. So that's what I'm talking about. So
when you talk about, excuse me, I heard my name.
Ken, I was gonna kind of go on to your question. When you talk about I, who am I, and the soul is infinite and eternal, but the soul does not know in and of itself, or in and by itself. It doesn't know. It only knows through I, Mike, I, Ken, I, Louis, I, Mosquito, etc., with a certain degree of knowledge. So the soul, as pure being, does not know. We are the, and this is my view, we are the instrument, the tool through which the soul knows itself. And each knowledge is different, because each mind is born in a different place, has a different body, has different aspects, different history, different everything. But you see where I'm going with this. So when I say I don't have a lot of time, what Mike is saying is that the aspect of the soul which is eternal, aspectualized in Mike, has a determined time. See? So life looks at itself through holes, and those holes are consciousness or aspects of itself, which can be a human consciousness, or it can be the doorbell on your door.
Yep. It's really good if that's, if that's what works for you, that's fine. You see, my take on what you're saying, though, it's the opposite. It's the soul that has all the knowledge. The soul knows what it is. It's the mind that doesn't. So when you call yourself I, and call yourself I as part of the body, and relate to yourself in the body that you are, of course, you're not going to know, because you're coming from the perspective of mind.
Very good. The soul knows everything, or is everything, potentially. So the infinite knowledge is potential, but it is actualized not infinitely. It is actualized with a certain degree, which is a curve from zero, not knowing nothing, to infinity. So the soul, being everything and nothing at the same time, potentially has infinite knowledge, and of course infinite time and space. It's everything. But because it is potential, it cannot know it but through its actualized self. I recommend reading the book by David Bohm, 1980s, 1970s physicist that spoke about the actualized reality and non-actualized reality. But it's the same thing. And he speaks of reality as a hologram, where when you go small, the whole of reality is potentially in that tiny little thing. For example, in my case, in this body, in this mind, in this envelope of phenomena, atoms and stuff, the whole of reality is potentially in there. So if you cut me up in a trillion little pieces, and you take the tiniest piece of myself, which is a quantum, of energy, the whole of the energy, the whole of reality is there, potentially, not actualized. That's why in physics, when they go small, and they go into the string, they find out in their formulas that the energy of space, the empty space of nothing, of 0 Kelvin, is infinite. That's the soul that you're talking about is right there, potentially, not actualized. That's why the soul, in my
How
view,
does it actualize?
Because of the nature of reality is quantum. That means that 0 Kelvin only exists for a span of time of 10 to the minus 35 in a space of 10 to the minus 35, which is the Planck scale, where when you cut reality into the tiniest piece, you see the quantum, which is 0, becoming something, or a quantum, with a frequency and an energy that is indescribable to us. So reality.
And then it has a massive expansion, correct? A massive expansion.
It could have, with a certain probability, the 0 can expand. That's the inflationary cosmology you're mentioning there. That 0, which has a very tiny energy, the quantum energy, the energy of a quantum, expands, and with it, each energy of the quantum 0 becomes, bigger and bigger and bigger, and can, or does, I believe, at infinity and in eternity, become a bubble.
So it sounds like you're describing. It sounds like you're describing the Big Bang, or
the Big Bang
theory,
and the Big Bang being crushed.
Yeah.
Because in the Big Bang, the problem is that they don't have time before time. They say, okay, it's 0, there's nothing. But in my view, because reality must be everything and nothing, so it is eternal and infinite at the same time, there cannot be no time. So every time 0 Kelvin becomes a quantum, that's a world right there in and of itself. Now, how big or small, it doesn't matter, because it's already there potentially. The soul of the universe is
now remember,
infinite and eternal.
0, the definition of 0 is of having no meaning, but still holding a place. You see?
To me, 0 is infinite.
Yeah.
I mean, 0 is the aspectual one. In the scope of reality, 0 is just one aspect, and infinite is another aspect. So to me, 0 and 1 are the same. That's the quantum nature of things. 0 is 1, 1 is 0. Form is emptiness, emptiness is form. I mean, in the Heart Sutra, that's the first thing. The first verse of the Heart Sutra is that.
Absolutely.
Form is emptiness, emptiness is form. And in that dipole, 0, 1, is the whole of the soul, the reality, and then you can kind of conceptualize what is 1. Is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the world that we see in its amplitude, in its incredible, 15 billion years worth of stars and galaxies, and us in there in the middle looking at it, is 1. And I mean, 1 can be very big, or very tiny. It can be a quantum. It can be a 0. So to me, the soul that you talk about, Brahman, is also Atman, is everything and nothing at the same time. But I insist, and this is my view, we can disagree on that the whole does not know itself fully, and only knows itself with a certain degree of clarity, which means that it knows itself just a little bit at the quantum level. The string, which is a quantum of 0, the 0 energizing itself into 1 with a very, very tiny time and span, lifetime and everything. It's almost virtual. They call it virtual particles. That is reality looking at itself with very little knowledge. And then you can put a lot of 1s together, and then you make a galaxy. And then within the galaxy, you have a planet. And then within a planet, you have something that becomes a brain, and then from the brain, from the complexity of that machine, self-awareness, happens. And then that self-awareness also is in a gradient of, am I a mosquito? Am I a primate? Am I an individual, a human? And then with each human consciousness, you have this kind of a transcendence, a thinking that leaves itself. In the Kula Shunyata Sutra of the Buddha, which is the Sutra on Emptiness, he describes the different levels of knowledge within the human mind. That's the most complex consciousness that we know of. And he goes from the levels of meditations, the 7 jhanas, the concentrations and everything. And then in the last one, the mind looks at itself and goes, I am impermanent, I am stressful, and I am nothing. And that knowledge frees itself from itself. And that's where reality is able to, like a superconductor, look at itself and go, here I am that. Sam, I think the thing is. So basically, reality, when it leaves the mind behind, the same analogy of the boat going from one shore to the other is still the same thing. It's just that reality cannot leave itself because there's nowhere to go, because reality is everything and nothing. So it doesn't matter. It's the lamp, the lava lamp. The yellow thing does not leave. It's there. It disappears, appears, disappears, appears. So that's reality looking at itself. And when it sees itself as such through a consciousness, an enlightened consciousness, a Buddha mind, it just gets there and it goes, okay, I sit at ease looking at myself. I don't suffer anymore, because before that there was a lot of noise in the lens. But as the consciousness becomes clearer and clearer, becomes more transcendent, sees through itself, through its phenomenal aspects, then the soul sees itself clearly beyond its own thinking apparatus, which is Atman, the human consciousness. And that's when it just sits down and goes, that's me. I just saw myself fully through this enlightened mind. So it's a coming together, a wholeness of the whole, looking at the whole through its parts.
And that coming together, and I'm totally in agreement. I don't disagree with anything you say. Trust me. Like I said, I don't disagree with what anybody believes or thinks and how they want to pursue it. I'm no problem with it. But what I'm saying is that consciousness that you get when you have that understanding is understanding what the soul has always known.
Potentially.
So
you actualize the potential. You actualize the potential knowledge, that infinite knowledge, which is transcendent. It has to be that when we talk about omniscience, it's not about knowing all the things. You cannot know all the things because each consciousness is in a place. So unless you use consilience and you use all the accumulated science of all the years of your and you go deep into each science and you grab everything, you still have to go through knowledge, the knowledge that goes through the knowledge, for reality to actualize its own potential, which is indescribable.
If the vehicle that you're using to attain that is the mind, yes, that's exactly what you have to go. Yes. But you can bypass all of that by merging with the soul. Because what you're getting to, when you got to that 7th level, when you said, now I really understand it, that's emergence with the soul. That's getting to understand what the soul has always known.
Well, the soul merging with itself, because there's no separation. There's only one soul.
So like I'm saying,
the mind is of the soul.
Pink Floyd, when I gave the analogy of Pink Floyd, instead of focusing on the aspects, which was everything that you described, focus on the one.
That's right.
The aspects take care of themselves. So you don't have to worry about attaining this, attaining that, by understanding the Atmas you were talking about, by going in and having the direct experience of the Atma. Everything that you've just described answers itself.
Yes. So how long is the trek between one shore to the other is up to each point. Now, some people take a lifetime to get there. It took me, I didn't think in these terms until I became about 38 or 40. And it took me a long time to go, okay, to build this kind of a verbalization within my mind, where it goes like, okay, this is reality thinking about itself. It took me 20 years. I don't know, maybe some people take 10, some people take 5. They say that a mind can enlighten, from birth.
Mm-hmm. Well,
Based on my own experience, I don't think it's very probable. Is it possible? Yes. But what is more probable is that a mind, through a lot of thinking, a lot of pondering, a lot of hypothesizing, a lot of consilience of different knowledge from different people, arrives to this conclusion. I have never seen, let's put it this way, a mind that was not very complex, abstract, educated, super perspective.
I can't hear.
Did you mute me?
No, I hear you.
Okay, so it's Ken who can't hear right now. Ken, you must have done something to your phone. Hello?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
If you can hear me, nod your head. Okay, I can't hear you.
Well, something
My
happened.
phone is acting up. I can't hear what you're saying.
Your admin became deaf.
Ken, I believe it's the connectivity in the room that you're in. Because
who is that?
The time where he dropped.
That's Rami.
I didn't know Rami was with us.
Yes, Rami. Welcome, Rami.
Welcome, Rami.
Are you enjoying?
From about 10 minutes or 15 minutes before Mike McKenna left. It's
Mike McKenna's gone.
Yeah.
I missed something in the memo.
5 minutes. Don't worry about your awareness features.
As you can see, I don't know everything, although I do believe that I know the nature of anything. Anyway, so, well, I am all out of fresh ideas here. As a matter of fact, I think I need to, yes?
Hello?
Yes.
Oh, okay, I'm back. Yeah, I lost audio. I'm sorry. I kind of missed that whole last part.
Gotcha. Well, I don't know where you lost your audio, but I think we both agree on the concept that the soul is the infinite knowledge of everything, by everything, and the human knowledge, the human enlightenment, is a function to infinity of that actualization of the potential infinite knowledge of the whole regarding itself.
Both Ken and Luis are conciliating towards the same object.
Yeah, we're trying to describe.
They come from different fields of study, but it sounds to me like they're pointing to the same moon.
Yeah, the same reality. We are trying to express conventionally the transcendental. So basically, we're trying to express the soul, this concept of soul, which is infinite knowledge of everything by itself, regarding itself, in a more trivial, more conventional way, which is the human language.
Yeah, exactly.
How do you
six-dimensional concept to a three-dimensional mind?
How do you describe the infinite through finite descriptions or words? But you can get very, very close to it. And of course, you have to kind of be very super perspective, very open-minded, very almost very disassembled in your mind, in order to be able, as a mind, to understand infinity and eternity right there in one swoop. I always say that this kind of feeling is going through a wormhole where the actualized deactualizes itself and goes through there's a word for that donut, and you kind of from one side, which is actualized, the phenomenal world, you deconstruct yourself and the world. You go through the middle and you fizzle out, you disappear, you become a 100% potential, zero actualization. In a sense, you become like the zero Kelvin, and boop, you pop on the other side, quantumized, and then you become, the whole of reality, which then, as you reactualize, become a human consciousness in the real world, in the phenomenal world.
You just described a black hole.
Yes, a black hole is as a white hole. There's no doubt about it. So basically, it is possible, and in physics terms, we could consider the soul as a black hole that has all the information, infinite information, that pops. It has so much density that the space-time is broken. So space-time is broken, and boom, you have a white hole, which is what we describe as the Big Bang.
Yeah, exactly.
Or sub-big bangs, or tiny big bangs.
I saw a note there by Rami saying, nope, I disagree. It just doesn't like that concept.
Oh, is there a chat?
There must be. I saw a note
I
there.
disagree. Rami disagrees. All right. Let's hear it.
Actually, there are 7 notes. Wait a minute. I missed that.
Oh,
How do we get to the notes? I'm new to this.
there's a button at somewhere. Well, it might be different on a phone, but on the desktop there's a little a thing for chat, and it throws a panel to the right, and you can see what I'm writing.
Okay, I'm seeing it now.
Okay, so Mike disappeared. Yeah, I see that. I was actually taking a
I see
leak.
7.
A very quiet leak. I disappeared to go take a leak because I drank too much coffee this morning. And in the meantime, Mike disappeared, and Rami joined in. So I missed half the picture. So Rami, you disagree?
I see.
What's the deal? You disagree with this description?
Well, the soul is inherited. Right? There's no will. Rather, it is something which was imbued into the first human, whoever and whomever the first humans were. And what we have is the inheritance of that one human soul.
Do mosquitoes have a soul? Do they inherit a soul too?
If they do, then it would be their mosquito soul. Now, whether the human soul, remember, we're only using words here to differentiate between a human soul and a mosquito soul. We could say single-celled organism's soul, and we could say that we all inherit that life, that force, that
So if
from the beginning of
Rami, if I change the word soul to self-awareness, and I did a function from 0 to infinity, would that also describe what you're saying? That every aspect of reality is endowed with some self-awareness that goes from 0 in a rock, for example, to infinity in an enlightened consciousness, human consciousness, for example?
I think it's unproven that awareness is something which exists in actuality. Awareness could be the effect of certain biological processes. So we like to think that we're aware. We act as though we're aware. We speak of awareness as it is an objective.
How can I get my beard like Ken's?
But even our consciousness themselves may be a reflection of something
not so enlightened.
at its core, something biological.
Well, you could say it's biological, but I like to kind of anthropomorphize self-awareness and just look at something that, like an instrument through which which is reality as a whole, is able to be aware of itself with a certain degree of clarity. That way, I could feasibly hypothesize that a string, which is the vibration nothingness, the first vibration of nothingness, of the empty space, could have a very tiny self-awareness. That means that reality could possibly see itself a little bit through a string, a little bit more through an atom, a little bit more through a molecule, a little bit more through a bucket of water, a little bit more through a leaf, a little bit more through a tree, a little bit more through a mosquito, and then a little bit more and more and more through a human mind, which is the more self-aware thing that we know of.
I have no problem with that.
Okay.
Whether it's the result of a biological process or whether it's a conceptual model. I mean, it sounds a very strong model, a very understandable model. It's a model to play with. It's good. But you also, on the other end of things, speak of infinity. Well, there are multiple infinities, and I don't think we've even reached the end of the first one. So when we think about ourselves as being potentially infinite or expressions of the infinite, I'm very quickly reminded that we have a beginning, we have an end. I don't know that the universe will exist beyond the span of time, but it seems that it would, though our form of consciousness of the universe may be superseded or extinguished.
Oh, that's for sure. Human self-awareness arises with the fetus and finishes with the death of that body. But the universal consciousness, which is unaware of itself, if it's not through one of these temporary consciousnesses, is infinite and eternal. I propose that reality, whether there is something or there is nothing, is still reality. So reality cannot but not exist, but exist.
There's something very what is the native religion to Japan?
Shinto?
Shinto. There's something very poetically Shinto about some of your words.
Uh-huh.
Well, Shinto ultimately goes back to India.
Yeah. To me, to be clear, I posit or I hypothesize that reality has no beginning and no end because reality exhibits two qualities or two aspects, which is being, anything different from zero, and non-being, which is zero. So it is, when I talk about reality, I'm not talking about things. Things are only aspects of reality. When I talk about reality, I talk about both things and no thing, that being 0 Kelvin. So, and that's, so whether it's something aspectualized or not, reality is. So that's, to me, it takes away the beginning and the end. Is there going to be a reality when all the galaxies disappear? And because when all the galaxies disappear, it's nothing but a big zero. I'll say, yeah, the reality will be there. It will be a big zero.
So where are your explorations in non-duality?
The non-duality is only a aspectual consideration of what is. So there is one reality. To me, non-duality is saying that there's only one reality, no matter what it looks like. Wherever you put your finger or your eye on or your ideas, there is reality. Reality is everywhere, nowhere, at the same time, and at no time. So basically, there is the only duality is precisely the aspectualization of the otherwise non-aspectual reality. The soul that